When David Chen picked up his knife and began cutting vegetables with surgical precision, despite being completely blind, the snickering from other contestants died instantly. But it was what happened next, when Gordon Ramsay tasted David's flawless dish and declared it the most technically perfect cooking I've seen in 30 years. That would silence every person who had dared to question whether a blind chef belonged in the MasterChef kitchen. What followed wasn't just a cooking competition anymore. It was a masterclass in how real talent transcends every limitation and how the most profound victories come from proving wrong those who never believed you belonged there in the first place. The cameras kept rolling, but this was no longer about winning a competition. This was about a 32-year-old chef who had spent his entire culinary career fighting to be judged by his skills rather than his disability, and the moment when his extraordinary abilities finally silenced every doubter in the room. It started as the most challenging mystery box test of the season. 7 contestants remained, each desperate to secure their place in the semifinals. The MasterChef kitchen buzzed with nervous energy as Gordon Ramsay prepared to announce the challenge that would determine who advanced and who went home. Today's mystery box contains ingredients for one of the most technically demanding dishes in classical cuisine, Gordon declared. You have 90 minutes to create a perfect beef Wellington with all the traditional accompaniments. This is a dish that has ended many professional careers. Technique, timing, and precision are everything. Beef Wellington, the dish that struck fear into the hearts of even experienced chefs. Perfectly cooked beef wrapped in duxelles and pâté, encased in flaky pastry that had to be golden outside and perfectly cooked inside. One mistake in timing or temperature, and the entire dish would be ruined. David Chen stood at his station, his fingers already exploring the mystery box contents with the methodical precision that had become his signature. At 32, he had been completely blind since birth, but had developed culinary skills that amazed everyone who worked with him. His knife work was legendary, his palate was extraordinary, and his understanding of texture, temperature, and timing was almost supernatural. What made David's presence in the MasterChef kitchen even more remarkable was that he had gotten there entirely on merit. He owned a successful restaurant in San Francisco, had trained under James Beard award-winning chefs, and had built his reputation through pure skill and determination. But despite his achievements, David still faced constant skepticism and condescending attitudes from people who couldn't understand how someone who couldn't see could possibly cook at the highest level. Standing nearby were contestants who had been whispering about David since day one. Marcus, a 28-year-old line cook from New York, had been particularly vocal about his belief that David's presence was just for show and that blind people shouldn't be in professional kitchens. Jessica, a 26-year-old culinary school graduate, had repeatedly made comments about safety concerns and special accommodations whenever David excelled at challenges. "I don't see how he's going to manage Wellington," Marcus muttered to Jessica as they examined their ingredients. "This dish is all about visual cues, seeing the pastry color, checking the meat doneness. He's going to be lost without someone helping him. It's not fair to the rest of us," Jessica whispered back. "We're competing against someone who probably has producers giving him extra help off camera. There's no way he can do this dish properly." Their conversation was loud enough for David to hear, but he had learned long ago to channel that kind of ignorance into fuel for his performance. He had faced these attitudes his entire career, people who assumed his blindness made him less capable, less professional, less worthy of respect. But David had also learned that the kitchen was the one place where results spoke louder than prejudice. "Your time starts now." The challenge began with the familiar explosion of movement as contestants rushed to organize their ingredients and plan their approach. David moved with calm efficiency, his hands quickly categorizing each ingredient by touch, smell, and weight. While others frantically read recipes and second-guessed their strategies, David was already building his dish in his mind, understanding every step required and the precise timing needed to execute it perfectly. His knife work immediately caught Gordon's attention. David's cuts were not just accurate, they were geometrically perfect. His brunoise was exactly uniform, his julienne vegetables were precisely the same size, and his movements were so fluid and confident that it looked like he was performing a choreographed dance. "Impressive technique at Station 3, Gordon murmured to Aaron as they watched David work. "His knife skills are extraordinary." Meanwhile, Marcus was struggling with his prep work despite having full vision. His cuts were uneven, his timing was off, and he kept glancing over at David with obvious resentment. "I still don't believe he's really doing this alone," Marcus said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Someone has to be helping him. This is supposed to be a fair competition." David didn't respond to the provocation, but several other contestants were visibly uncomfortable with Marcus's continued commentary. They had watched David cook for weeks now and knew that his abilities were genuine and extraordinary. 45 minutes into the challenge, David was assembling his Wellington with methodical precision. His hands moved over the pastry with perfect confidence, feeling for texture and temperature in ways that allowed him to monitor the cooking process more accurately than sight alone ever could. His technique was remarkable to watch. Where other contestants relied on visual cues, David used a combination of sound, smell, touch, and intuition that gave him information others couldn't access. He could tell exactly when his mushroom duxelles had reached perfect consistency by the sound of the moisture evaporating. He knew his beef was perfectly seared by the aroma and the feel of the crust. He understood his pastry's readiness by the gentle resistance it offered to his touch. "This is incredible," whispered Sarah, another contestant who had been watching David work. "His understanding of the cooking process is better than most sighted chefs I know." But Marcus wasn't convinced. "He's probably memorized this dish 100 times, he said dismissively. "It's easier when you only have to focus on one recipe instead of thinking creatively like the rest of us." Jessica nodded in agreement. "Plus, he's probably getting help we can't see. The producers probably coached him through this before filming." Their comments were not only wrong, but insulting to David's genuine skill and years of professional training. But David had learned that the best response to ignorance was excellence, so he continued working with the focused intensity that had made him successful. 30 minutes remaining. David was ready to put his Wellington in the oven, and his timing was perfect. The pastry looked golden and beautiful, the seams were properly sealed, and the internal temperature would be ideal when it finished cooking. His side dishes were already prepared with a restaurant-quality presentation, and his red wine reduction was developing complex flavors that filled his station with an incredible aroma. Meanwhile, Marcus was panicking. His Wellington pastry was too thick, his beef was overcooked, and his timing was completely off. Jessica's dish was falling apart as well. Her pastry was soggy, and her mushroom duxelles was watery and underseasoned. 15 minutes remaining. David removed his Wellington from the oven at exactly the right moment, guided by the sound of the pastry crisping and the aroma that told him everything was perfectly cooked. He let it rest for the precise amount of time needed, then began slicing it with confidence that came from understanding the dish at a molecular level. When he cut into the Wellington, it revealed perfect layers, golden pastry, savory duxelles, tender beef, cooked to an exact medium rare. The presentation was flawless, the accompaniments were professionally executed, and the entire plate looked like it came from a Michelin-starred restaurant. "Time, hands up, step back." The judging began, with Gordon approaching each station to evaluate the dishes. He started with Marcus, whose Wellington was a disaster. Overcooked beef, soggy pastry, and poorly executed sides that looked nothing like the dish was supposed to. "Marcus," Gordon said after tasting, "this is unacceptable. The beef is overcooked, the pastry is soggy, and the flavors are muddy. This doesn't represent the technical skill required for this challenge." Marcus's face flushed with embarrassment, but his humiliation was only beginning. Gordon moved to Jessica's station, where her Wellington had completely fallen apart during slicing. "Jessica, this pastry is raw in places and overcooked in others. The beef is unevenly cooked, and the presentation shows a fundamental lack of understanding of this dish. Then Gordon approached David's station, and his expression immediately changed. The Wellington looked absolutely perfect. Golden pastry, beautiful presentation, and an aroma that indicated expert-level execution. Gordon cut into the Wellington and revealed layers that were textbook perfect. He tasted it slowly, and his face showed genuine amazement. "David," Gordon said, his voice filled with unmistakable admiration, "this is extraordinary. In 30 years of cooking and judging, I have rarely seen a Wellington executed with this level of technical precision." The kitchen fell completely silent. Marcus and Jessica looked stunned. The pastry is golden and flaky. The beef is cooked to a perfect medium rare throughout, and the duxelles shows real understanding of moisture control and seasoning. Gordon continued, "This is restaurant-quality execution that would be impressive in any professional kitchen." Gordon turned to address the entire kitchen, using David's achievement as a teaching moment. "Let this be a lesson to everyone," Gordon announced. "Cooking at this level isn't about what you can see. It's about understanding flavor, mastering technique, and developing the kind of sensory awareness that comes from years of dedicated practice." Gordon looked directly at Marcus and Jessica. "I heard some comments earlier about fairness and accommodations. Let me be clear. David has just demonstrated cooking skills that exceed what most sighted chefs achieve. His success comes from talent, training, and dedication, not from any assistance." Marcus stood speechless, his earlier confidence completely shattered by the objective evidence of David's superior skill. "David," Gordon continued, "you're not just safe from elimination, you've just shown everyone what mastery looks like. This dish represents everything we're looking for in a master chef: technical excellence, creative understanding, and the ability to perform under pressure." What happened next was unprecedented in MasterChef history. The other contestants who had witnessed David's extraordinary performance began applauding spontaneously. Even those who had been skeptical were now showing genuine respect and admiration. "I owe you an apology," said Sarah, approaching David's station. "Watching you cook has been one of the most educational experiences I've had in this competition. Your technique is incredible." One by one, the other contestants acknowledged what they had witnessed, not inspiration or overcoming disability, but simply exceptional cooking that happened to be performed by someone who was blind. Marcus, humiliated by his poor performance and his earlier comments, quietly approached David. "I was wrong," he said simply. "Your cooking speaks for itself." Gordon made the elimination announcement. "Marcus, your time in the MasterChef kitchen is over." Justice had been served. The contestant, who had questioned David's abilities, was eliminated, while David advanced with the best dish of the day. The episode became legendary, not because it was inspiring, but because it showcased genuine excellence, triumphing over prejudice and ignorance. Viewers were amazed by David's technical skills and satisfied by seeing talent recognized, regardless of physical differences. David went on to reach the finale, where his consistent excellence earned him the runner-up position. More importantly, his performance changed conversations about inclusion and ability in professional kitchens. Today, David's restaurant is considered one of the best in San Francisco, and he's become a respected voice in the culinary world, not as a blind chef, but simply as an exceptional chef who happens to be blind. His MasterChef journey proved that real talent transcends any limitation, and that the most satisfying victories come from letting your work speak louder than anyone's doubts. Because that's what David Chen taught everyone that day: that excellence knows no boundaries, that skill is measured by results rather than circumstances, and that the most profound way to silence skeptics is through undeniable mastery of your craft. If you enjoyed this story about talent triumphing over prejudice, you can watch more inspiring videos that showcase real skill and determination on our channel. Subscribe to stay updated with stories that remind us that ability comes in many forms and should always be judged by results, not assumptions.